very good evening to each one of you. On behalf of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome you all for this exclusive session on GST survey supported by Deloitte team. On behalf of BCIC, we express our sincere thanks to Dr. B.V. Murali Krishna, Additional Commissioner of State Taxes e-Governance, for accepting our invitation to be part of this session. Thank you very much, sir, for your support. We
Thank
also
you.
We also express our thanks to Mr. Bhaskar, who is the partner Deloitte India, and Ms. Sangeeta Prakash, who is the director Deloitte India, for structuring the session. Thank you. The session is organized under the aegis of Indirect Taxes Expert Committee, and we have with us Mr. Badrinath, who is also the partner of Singhvi Dev and Unni LLP, who will be in this session. We also welcome Mr. Mahesh Jai Singh. Welcome for the session, sir. The Chamber acknowledges the support of our member organizations by way of annual sponsorship of the events, Messrs. Bueller, Fundermax, Wipro, MTR Foods, and Sona Group of companies. Thank you all the participants for joining this session. And now I hand over the platform to Mr. Badrinath. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Rupa. Thank you very much. As Rupa was mentioning, maybe I'll just take a few minutes before we start on this. This Deloitte, to commemorate the 5th year of GST, had recently conducted a survey in terms of how the GST has, how the experiences have been in the last 5 years and what is there as a lot of us. Okay. Deloitte was kind enough. Thank you for agreeing to share the results of your survey with the members of BCIC. Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, Mahesh and Sangeeta. Thank you so much for that. And the format of the discussion is going to be as follows. We'll hear it from Mahesh to start with, a quick intro on the survey that Deloitte has done, followed with Bhaskar and Sangeeta sharing the results of the survey in more detail with us. And yes, we have Dr. Murali Krishna, who's our very own, who actually needs no introduction. Thank you, sir. Thank you for making it today. Thank you very much for your time and effort for today. He'll share his perspective on the findings of the survey, on the observations of Deloitte from a government's perspective. Thank you, sir. Mahesh, over to you.
Thanks again. I think clearly maybe we should invite Mr. Murali Krishna, sir. Would you like to give us something, opening remarks? Because I will get into what the highlights of the survey are, but I'll be guided by you, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Mahesh and Badri and all their team members and Deloitte and BCIC. And it's a very good report. In fact, yesterday ma'am was discussing why we couldn't look into this kind of a report from a different organization. And it's a very good report of what Deloitte has come out with for GST at 5. And even in fact, before looking at the particular survey report and the day itself, I read the news report and I shared that particular news report with many of my taxpayers groups, like the chartered accountants or my tax practitioners. I think many might have come across. Particularly, I was delighted to see around 90% of the business concerns have accepted the GST implementation. That itself is the greatest acceptance, because the big, particularly around 234, I think, yes, number 234 people have been surveyed. And in spite of there could have been an additional more number could have been taken as a sample survey, and it's not a less number. 234 people are spreading across the different sectors. Let be hospitality, let it be financial services, let be other different services. And even looking at the net worth individuals also, more than 1,000, 2,000, all different sectors have been covered. And survey has been done very neatly. And the biggest plus point, what I saw, that adoption of technology, and particularly for ease of doing business, how the government is coming out with let be e-way bill or e-invoicing, or let be now the analytical tool what we have developed by NIC Karnataka. Across India, around 20 states are being used. I think that has not been factored into that particular report. That being that it is an internal analytical tool, but all the states are widely using that particular tool for unearthing the tax evasion. And if I look at it, the key impact of the surveys, even coming to the major aspect is ITC. That is the backbone and the That's the crux of the whole GST implementation. Without inputters credit, nothing happens. So that is the crux. The law and the technology both are working. I don't think who is first and who is next, and who. So they have to work with the sync. Some way sync is not happening. I can make it out with these so many notifications, rules, and thing. And coming to the key aspects of to be taken away by the industry is what actually expects the ease of doing business or removal of GST credit restrictions or other bringing legislative changes in ITC provisions and all that. If you look at the overall aspect of the survey, or what I can say, I feel still much more could have been done. Not needless to say what has not been done. What I mean to say, if the sample survey would have been more, I think would have got a better outputs. What I felt so, because being come from a scientific background myself also, still some more the factors could have been added. So it has come out very well, and certainly the government will look into that many changes what actually we have to adapt. And the as the 47th council meeting, everyone has looked into it. We are already adapting to change of it. And coming to the setting up of tribunal, I think already one ministerial group has been initiated, and they are working on that. I know it has been delayed, should not be denied. Though it is delayed, it should not be denied, should have come early. And another coming to the advanced ruling aspect. See, so much of issues coming out with that was I saw what is the biggest challenge in litigations under GST. Yeah, true. I do can understand different advanced rulings. Proactively, advanced ruling has been given, or they given asked by the taxpayers, and the rulings have been given. There are inconsistencies, and particularly coming to the cross charge and the within the business entities and the business holdings. There are so many issues. I think now the tax officials have understood proper the business concerns, nor the representation might have been with little limitations, because when this kind of a big amalgamation of between services and goods have happened, and so much of inflow has happened into this particular concept, somewhere I feel even some of the officers and officials also should have understood the accounting principles and accounting standards and many more aspects. If you ask me personally, not as an officer, I can say there should have been one advanced ruling for the across the country instead of having multiple advanced rulings and multiple clarifications and all that. Let us hope for the days to come how it happens. With all that, coming to dispute resolution, that was the biggest challenge in your report. I do agree. Though 5 years have been lapsed and the dispute resolution has been not put in place proper. That's what I can share with you all people. End of the day, the report has come out very well, and let's open for discussion. And I would like to ask all the members if we can permit me after another half an hour to leave the discussion so that I have another meeting at FKCCI. With that remarks, end of the day, I would like to say one thing. I think sync between GSTN and the law is happening. Technology certainly is enabling. And recently, you might have seen the report. E-invoicing may come a reality for more than 5 crore and 10 crore and above in days to come. Once the e-invoicing was put in place, I think there should not be much of input tax credit issues would have come across. And another thing, game changer, what I could see in your report is discussions with the vendors. See, that's the biggest. That's where actually talking to each other. See, that's what always I say whenever I go for my sessions. See, the vendor selection should have been the most paramount important for the business processes. And even actually, Badri, quite often they say the indexing or the ratings of the GST. I think that also has been not been factored till date. I think that also should have come into the ranking perspectives. With that, I leave the floor to for discussion. I congratulate the Delight and the people who have really done this particular tremendous work of collating the informations and giving to the industry as well as to the government to look into that. Over to everyone.
Thank you, sir. I think Badri, now it reiterates why I requested Mr. Murali Krishna to jump in with his opening remarks, I wonder what we have to discuss. He's very succinctly summarized this. Thank you, as always. I think
Thank you, sir.
there are, sir, you are rightly observed that it's a population of about 240 companies. It's a split of MSME, large and very large, cutting across sectors. I think the messaging is clear that almost 90% have actually welcomed GST. 59 to be precise say it's positive, 31 say neutral, and therefore, in some sense, a reform of this nature being neutral, we look at it as being welcome. I think, and even when we pause and reflect at this moment, where to me, what is the largest positive of the GST, which doesn't come in any survey, is really the harmonious way in which the states and the center have worked in this reform that was in the making for many years. And kudos to all states and specifically Karnataka on one aspect which stands out very brightly. And if you see in bullet 3, where of course you rightly said that the participants have felt that technology has played a good role, thumbs up. But 59% also feel that the issuance of clarifications being engaged with industry has immensely helped. For the benefit of all the participants, I've had the benefit of engaging with Mr. Murali Krishna sir and the Commissioner Madam and Ravi Prasad sir, the whole team on two matters that I strongly think that if not for the state of Karnataka, we would it may have come, but it would have come many quite later. On the intermediary clarification, I think clearly Karnataka was supportive that there needs to be a clarification and got the matter tabled in the law committee, as well as the recent parity issue on the MSME sector for going online. Again, looks like our survey report came 15 days before, and while we are sitting on July 1st, a lot of changes have actually come in into the last GST Council meeting. And therefore, the way I look at it is that this engagement we are hoping only continues, sir, from industry, because as we are going into year 6 and the audits and assessment go up, we are hoping that continues, and we are grateful to the journey so far with Karnataka, state of Karnataka, and we would like that to continue, because with our seat on and our active participation both in law committee as fitment committee, we couldn't have been more lucky to have all of you being supportive with us. On the industry expectation on ease of doing business, I wanted to just make an overarching point for your kind consideration from our industry body as BCIC. I think clearly we would like to state that what we are seeing, so beyond a point, output tax, give and take, everybody has got it right. Input credit, yes, there are reconciliations and others, but thanks to the enhanced technology changes from the government, we've been able to, uh, of course, teething troubles are there from industry to catch up at the speed of the government, but keeping that aside, that matter is largely taken care. But where we are seeing a lot of audits, disputes, and debates is on these deeming fiction provisions, whether on import of service or on self-supply of the services. Today's forum is not to represent all our laundry list of issues, so I won't do that. But wanted to just make a humble submission and a request in the backdrop of this survey that as a ease of doing business aspect, particularly for aspects and supplies that are revenue neutral, if there could be a relook so that companies are also not really worried about some of the deeming fiction provisions, especially when there's no real revenue either to the center or the state of Karnataka or any other state, we'll be highly obliged. Some thinking around working capital credit. All states and the center have been very supportive of investments. There is also the PLI scheme. There is a capital focus in the country. Having said that, today the lacuna is that large companies or companies who have in a loss-making mode or in a very capital-intensive mode have huge credits that there's no refund. I must say, even in our survey, refunds have been acknowledged to be faster and good. But what happens is that's available only for exporters and probably for inverted duty structure. But what happens to those credits that are just trapped? Can we think of innovative ways to be able to put the money back in the market as things are particularly getting tight in the last 6 months from a business and economy perspective? You were kind to acknowledge that an overarching concern is how do we get a logical end to dispute resolution? as well as you observe that the GOM has been formed. And like I said, maybe some of this lighter vein has come in just a week before the council. I wonder if any of this had any role to play. Not that I expect any credit, but I'm delighted to hear that the tribunal is hopefully around the corner so that we can have logical conclusions. And that's the nature of the law and how things are. We will have cases to agree to disagree from both sides, and therefore the appellate forum. With that, I'll hand over to Bhaskar. But Mr. Murali sir, any reactions to any of my comments? We'll all be speaking on behalf of the entire participants today. If you can, any directional comments, agree, disagree, or over to you, sir. Murali sir.
Mahesh, I don't have any comments to add to that. What you have said it very perfect. And I think the government is in tune with that. I think there are a lot of issues, particularly the dispute resolutions, particularly it's not taken up into such a skill because audits have not been started across the country properly. That's one thing one should look into it. Because even 1718, even in 47 council, they have given another 6 months extra time for adjudication under 73. I think this 1 year, I think a lot of disputes may rise. And coming to your business modules of holding investments and all that, there are issues to be looked into it. I think in that sense, the government is working on that. Let us see how actually go through. Made a good remarks. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Bhaskar, over to you.
Yeah, thanks Badri, thanks Murali Krishna sir, and thanks Mahesh for this good overview. Now you made our maybe Sangeeta. I would request Sangeeta to just take us through the survey, and between me and Sangeeta, we will do a dialogue and then present the Deloitte GST survey to you all. Sangeeta.
Sure. Thank you, Bhaskar. Before we get into some of the findings of, the survey results itself, we thought we'll just cover an overview of, what is the impact that GST had and what are the efficiencies that it's brought in. And I think not surprisingly, what's emerged from the survey and first on cards is digitization and automation. I think both of these aspects have been a big win under GST, and none of this would have been possible without the one-stop shop portal that is GST and that we have for all things compliance under GST. If you look at the earlier regime, taxpayers had to log into multiple state portals to undertake their compliance, file returns, claim refunds. But that's gone away completely under GST, and it can all be done through a single portal. So all in all, I would say that, and that's what the survey results indicate as well. 80% of our respondents have stated that automation and digitization is the biggest achievement under GST. The second one that has been voted, and it's a close second, is the removal of cascading effect of taxes, and not surprisingly so. If you look at, GST vis-a-vis the earlier regime, a trader under the VAT era could not claim service tax credit. Similarly, a service provider was not entitled to credit of taxes paid on local procurements. Import duties were not fungible. So I think a lot of these have increased. Because the credit on these have been allowed under GST, the credit base has increased. And this has allowed two things. And again, this has come out in the survey as well. It's allowed companies to competitively price their goods and services, and 56% of respondents have stated that. And they've also stated that overall, in the whole scheme of things, they've been able to make available goods and services at cheaper prices to customers. In fact, if you look at, when we implemented GST, it's not as if the price of goods, went up, and this was the apprehension or the fear that one had when GST was implemented. That's not happened either, because we had gone basis the experience of other countries on this aspect. And if you compare India to some of these other countries which had implemented GST just before us, I think India fared fantastically well on this aspect as well. The third thing, and according to me, as a consultant, perhaps the standout feature is the center-state collaboration. I think it's a testament to the way, fiscal fiscal federalism can work, and also how consensus-based approach to policy making works. Mahesh just mentioned in his opening remarks as well. We've had opportunity to sit across the table with both officials from the center and the state who've always been open to a dialogue and discussion on interpretation issues or contentious issues under GST. And again, I mean, if you look at it, the GST Council has completed 47 meetings recently. And if you just go back to the council minutes that are uploaded on the website, each meeting has extremely heavy topics. None of it is, I mean, I can't think of one meeting where there are only some few procedural aspects that are clarified. So I think the collaboration between the center and the state as far as GST goes has been fantastic, and we hope to see this in the coming years as well. The fourth point that stood out in the survey results is the fact that companies voted that GST has helped in removal of state barriers. If you look at supply chain or whatever, if you look at how companies position their location of factories before GST, they would look at tax arbitrage, but that's gone away completely under GST. The only factor that is today determining how and why companies choose a particular place to set up operations in is purely supply chain, and that is telling in something in terms of the success of a regime. And like I said, connected to the removal of cascading effect of taxes, it's also helped in competitive pricing of goods. And overall, keeping all of these aspects in mind, a whopping 90% of our respondents, and this is across sectors. If I can just go to the next slide to cover this as well. If you look at it, it's not as if the 90% is from a single sector alone. In fact, our respondents are evenly spread across the 6 sectors that you see on your slide. All of them have, are in favor of GST and have voted, positively on the success of it. So I think all in all, the industry response to GST has been fantastic, and that shows in the survey results. Bhaskar, anything from your end to add on this?
Yeah. Thanks, Sangeeta. I remember my days, the pre-GST scenario where if a client has to send some merchandise or goods to a particular state, say in North or Northeast, we used to have an X-axis and Y-axis to say which state the material is going from, which state it is going to, what are the e-way bill forms. We had multiple forms. That is all gone away, Sangeeta. That I can completely correlate. That has become a matter of past. And I was also told from the industry that the truck movement, because of not the way bill being very uniform, the trucks reach quite early as compared to the legacy system. And we also just know that in addition to the e-way bills, there were also octroi in the state of Maharashtra. So all that has gone. One, it has helped for the trucks to reach faster. And more importantly, as you rightly mentioned, the cascading effects is completely gone. And no more in all the RFPs, there is no more a question where whether you're going to supply goods or services locally or it's a cross-border thing. That is all gone, and it's a very, very good commercial move from a GST perspective, and business are benefiting thoroughly on this, Sangeeta. This is what I wanted to add on this slide, and all valid points here.
Just to add on, Sangeeta, to Bhaskar, whatever the objectives been forethought in GST implementation, I think all those objectives have been met. In one single sentence, I can put it across. All that's been met. I think it's all because of the unified approach and like one nation, one market, one tax, and one platform, and single window agencies. And the technology has enabled everything to that effect. That's what I would like to add.
So you've given me a perfect segue to the next thing. And since you've come in, I must request you, particularly given, your forte, 80% of respondents, like I said, have voted that automation is the biggest achievement or success point of GST. Any quick thoughts or comments on that, sir?
Certainly, because I'm in this e-governance in the past 10 years, directly or indirectly. I always bifurcate India into two, the north of Vindhyachal and south of Vindhyachal. If you make a survey of north of Vindhyachal and the south of Vindhyachal, I think that 80 becomes 99 and the upstream becomes around 70%. That clearly shows the reason why the GST 2 was failed. Otherwise, I don't think if that would have been in place, the 3B would have been gone, taken a backseat quite long back itself. That doesn't matter. Whatever happens, happens for the good thing, the reason. Sangeeta and Bhaskar would like to say, if the T wouldn't have taken a backseat and the 3B wouldn't have come backseat, I don't think e-invoicing would have become a reality. So in that sense, I welcome whatever the hiccups happened from 2020. We had this e-invoicing, even coming to that B2C transaction where QR code wanted to happen. It didn't take a light of it because of it's not technological reasons. It's a policy where somewhere the bottleneck has happened. And as I said, technology is going to replace the compliances. The day may come once e-invoicing becomes, everything becomes a reality. Yes.
No, right, perfect, sir. And in fact, if you look at it, e-invoicing, to my mind, e-invoicing has helped companies sort of ride that digital wave as well, right? The threshold's also been progressively reduced over the last 2.5 years. So, I mean, one is equipping the large taxpayers with technology and digitization, but I think GST has also helped the MSME sector ride that digital wave, like I said. So I think that is why you see the result the way you see it on the screen. The third one, sir, and Mahesh covered this very aptly. He said, this timely issuance of circulars and, issuance of instructions to resolve any ambiguities at the ground level. 59% of our respondents have voted that this is another aspect that they believe that the government has done very well on. Mahesh and I have personally witnessed this in Karnataka, of course, and he's already talked about the specific points in which we've received your support. I don't think taxpayers could have expected anything more. The response and the next point is connected to that. The willingness to engage with trade bodies to understand what are the challenges and difficulties that industry is facing. Being willing to hear us out and implementing solutions together, using us as an ally to implement those solutions. I think that's very clearly visible under GST, and that's what industry feels as well. Even in our small pool of 234 respondents, I think it shows. And at the same breath, I mean, when we asked respondents where the government has done well, we said, keeping those aspects in mind, do you believe there are areas where the government, or areas that the government should focus on in the coming years? And like you said, so the first thing that came up is the ease of doing business. And if I connect it to the point of automation, just taking cue from what you said, I think initially the plan was to have a fully automated return mechanism. And I think that is what industry is asking for when they say ease of doing business. GSTR1 is, of course, largely populated in some sense, but today, the GSTR 2A, 3B, 2B, 3B reconciliation is still cumbersome. It's, there are reconciliation issues, there are follow-up with vendors that are required. Some sort of progress on, in that area is, I think, what. Sure, sir.
See, Sangeeta, I would like to add one thing basically because I can recollect my memory of the project coordinator EU Pass uploading of purchase sales statement what I implemented in Karnataka in 2014. And I can share that on tax report or how the buoyancy has been changed and all that. Why I'm trying to tell you this particular point, basically, I think industry should take a lead. All the government also should take a lead. See, we put a law, we put a platform, but will not take to the logical end. That's where we are making a mistakes, which I learned during my 2014-15, my journey of handholding my taxpayers. The reason is that in a short span of 9 months from 2014 April till by March 2015, I could get around 94% complaints of uploading of purchase and sales statements. That's not a small task. Even in this past 5 years, you are giving 80% of the complaints report. That a survey of 234, which you have good net worth individuals. You understood what I'm trying to tell you, ma'am. The reason is that unless until the government industry association, they reach out to the last leg, you can't make it to happen at all. The GST2 failed only because of that. People started getting, I don't know what actually they got into their mind. The 2 and the 1 is nothing but it is just a follow the precursor, the precursor to our EU pass, what actually we rolled out. What I was trying to tell very clearly is that putting a platform, putting a law, not only that, taking to the last mile with this kind of outreach activities and awareness and teaching the nuances. I'm telling you that you can take a good, take a lead advantage and make it possible. And coming to that 59% of issuance of circulars and clarifications, I, as a taxpayer, as a not as an officer, I'll differ. First, why you should create ambiguity? Why I should create an ambiguity first? Even today, pre-label, pre-packaged, as per the legal metrology act. Come on, yeah, you say packed or unpacked. Packed is 5%, unpacked is no tax. That's it. It's as simple as that. What I'm trying to tell you, I don't know why we are going still in the nuances of interpretations. That's what I want to tell you. Even today, I texted back to my officers group. They have detected some amount of revenue, non-filing of compliances, cross verification. They are coming, so we find out all this. Finally, they putting it a note saying that, hey, this taxpayer was a co-working space individual. It was very difficult to follow it up. Do you know what I put a message in my group of my for 60 officers? Good effort, congratulations, but co-working space business premises is not a flaw at all. With the technology, anybody can be tracked. I think I'm driving my point. See, even offices has to change the mindsets. Policymakers has to change the mindsets. I'm telling you, my dear, I don't mind. I'm very critical and vocal what I'm trying to tell you. In fact, I had 10 years back this business fulfillment center, Amazon, whoever it is. I'm the only one who said, yes, why we should not. The reason is that any package can be tracked nowadays. Anything can be tracked nowadays. Even if I open my mobile, if my location is on, everyone knows where I am. Anything can be tracked. See, that is the advantage of technology. So in that way, other way around, we should thank the COVID also. During COVID time also, technology could take to another leap, and wherein even e-invoicing could be able to possible at that particular time. So end of the day, whatever we do, we have to take to the logical end, means you have to handle the taxpayers and make the handholding of the offices in all perspectives. I think with both the things, we can make it any business model successful.
But if I'm going to jump in because I'm just so tempted, I think the Parliamentary Standing Committee report has taken a lot of the points that you just mentioned. In fact, they've specifically called out to recognize about, you know, place of business doesn't actually have to be brick and mortar style. Because if I want to be as Mahesh traders in 20 states, why do I need to take an office on rent and have an employee there?
I don't
One.
want.
Absolutely, sir. I think if we, but I mean, we would love to engage obviously with y'all to take some of the Parliamentary Standing Committee report suggestions. How can we work with y'all to take it to the Law Committee to the logical conclusion? So we're happy to, as BCIC, to take that
So, Mahesh,
offline
that's
with
what I'm
you.
trying to tell you. You have to change the mindset of an officers and their working style. Basically, we have to see to that they should understand technology can bring a change. Technology can be tracked down. That's what even the policymakers, because see, I can make it very clear. They are 30 to 40, 50 years old officers who are sitting in the policy making. They won't. I don't think they would have quite good in using technology at all. They don't know what is the usefulness of technology. Still, they have that fear. I don't know from where they will get that fear.
No, and I just want to add one more point, sir, because I think you did explain uh, above a particular point and below. I'm sorry, I missed that location. But there's also data to show that the suspension of registrations has been very high for mid and north India as against south, because unfortunately after the December 2020 change in the law that a suspension can happen without a right an opportunity of being heard, companies are feeling vulnerable that suddenly there's a spot inspection, somebody comes to the co-working space, employee is not there, the registration is suspended. The supplier may have paid taxes for the last 60 months without even 1 month return delay or the payment delay. Despite that, we are having this situation. So, I mean, and I know that when we were engaging in a different context, I didn't have any example in Karnataka to give you, but it is there. Of course, this council, we are grateful for one of the changes that talks about an automatic revocation where there is a delay in the return. But the problem which is really hurting is not the people who have delayed return, but those who didn't delay, had a spot inspection and then a suspension, and it's taking a long time to get it restored, sir. I'll leave you with that point because you have been consistent and state of Karnataka has been consistent. How do we take this to a logical end? We'll be grateful for all our members, sir.
I think already 2 or 3 issues have been answered in your persuasion. I think this should not be unanswered. I think it is this to point may be answered. Let's get back to the survey.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Manish. I think the key takeaway here, therefore, is while technology has kept pace in some sense, can the legislature also not start to accept newer ways of doing business? And the second is, like Murali Krishna sir mentioned in the beginning in his opening speech, he said, it's GST is nothing but an amalgamation of the earlier laws. A lot of the interpretational issues that we have under GST already have, they already have settled jurisprudence under the earlier laws. So do we really have to reinvent the wheel? Can we not just rely on those and, not sort of re-agitate some of these discussions is, I think, the key takeaways here. Bhaskar, anything else to add from your end?
Yeah, Sangeeta. So I like you said the last point. I think we have a very, very rich judicial precedents and jurisprudence. I think maybe with respect to any kind of an investigation or an audit or an assessment, if the request is made to the government in terms of just going and digging into the, say, service tax jurisprudence or any excise or customs without reinventing the whole wheel, that will put less stress on the taxpayers, and obviously we can just reach faster. As Sir was mentioning, the idea is to have less confusion, less litigation. But having said that, if an issue has an elements of gray, obviously we just go look into our backyard and see if there is any judicial precedents. And if we have something very similar to what has been settled in the service tax regime or the legacy tax system, if we can leverage that, that would be really, really helpful, is what I thought, Sangeeta. Yeah, the other thing as well, I think Sir did allude to in terms of having a uniform kind of a ruling, one advanced ruling authority. Similarly, at least the aspiration from the industry is that if we have one set of guidelines across the country in terms of any issues which the officers would bring up as part of their investigation or assessment or an audit, that would also help the trade and industry to just complete the audit and start focusing on the business back.
So we also asked participants if, whether the digitization that GST has brought in has been helpful. I think the answers are a little, this is the only question where we had some sort of divided response. To my mind, the respondents have kept in, they've sort of looked at some of the teething issues that they may have had with GST and then responded to it. But in any case, if you look at it, it's more skewed towards MSME saying that, digitization has only been partially helpful. The large and large companies have, of course, voted that there has been significant digitization that GST has brought in. And like Sir was mentioning, the use of BIFA, I think that will only open more doors to companies to improve their reconciliations, improve their processes, have more robust tracking of transactions, and ensure that all of this is driven by AI. I think that is the future of GST and tax compliance under indirect taxes. Bhaskar, anything else from your end on this slide?
No, just I want to add here. If you would have
Yes.
made a survey with making 3 aspects in independent, like on GSTN and NIC. See, there are 2 software providers, service providers are there for the GSTN. The problem is that at large, people will fail to understand that everything is GSTN alone. The backend Infosys for the compliances, returns and all that. And coming to e-bill and e-invoicing, it is NIC team and headquartered in Karnataka. If you would have structured your survey in how the e-bill compliances, how the e-invoicing, and how the GST, I think you would have got a different ratings altogether. That's what I mean to say.
Yeah, and Sangeeta, I think one other point is in terms of many people saying partially yes, maybe they are just getting, maybe, I don't know, it's maybe the digitization has led to some kind of an increased kind of a compliance burden, unlike in the legacy system. That could be a partially yes, but I would just agree with what Sir has mentioned, GST and NIC. NIC in terms of the invoicing of the e-way bill, at least nobody has come to us and say that the portal is not working or they're not able to churn out the e-way bill. So maybe digitization is just mixed up with maybe increased compliance burden, though it has been digitized, is what I think, Sangeeta.
Right, and maybe the answer will change in a while. In the last GST, post the last GST Council meeting, they've actually announced that GOM setup for technology will be a permanent one, and will continue to make recommendations, keeping in time with business changes. So I think perhaps in a few years, we're only 5 years young, so maybe this response will be a little different in a few years. And a connected point that we asked participants is, how do you think GST has helped tax function, your internal tax function? The answers are not surprising. ERP automation has emerged as the number one advantage or change that GST has brought about. Data management, like I said, and I think Mahesh mentioned it earlier. He said, we're getting into the audit life cycle under GST. So there's a need, like I mentioned just a while ago, there's a need to get data audit ready. And that is why you see that response. There's a lot of compliance automation, obviously, and automation of tax analytics. But the most important thing that stood out for me is data analytics. I think it's time companies start using their GST data to actually drive business decisions. It's never been the case under the pre-GST era, because the data was so scattered, not available in one place, took a lot of manual intervention to get it all in place to undertake any sort of data analytics. But today, everyone has their GST data in a single portal, or even if not, the GST and data itself is available. So I think that's the aspect that stood out for me, at least.
Yeah, so Sangeeta, thanks. So I think whenever there was an ERP implementation prior to GST, the ERP was implemented in a very solo basis, excluding the tax. And then maybe once the ERP is implemented, there are certain reports which gets churned out from the ERP, and that would get wired from an indirect tax compliance perspective. But of late, what we are seeing is, and there is a heightened collaboration between the ERP teams in an organization as well as the tax teams. So now at the time of blueprinting itself, the tax team is a key stakeholder in the ERP implementation. And that is why you say 64% of the people feel that the ERP is the backbone, and without a ERP which can take care of the GST compliances is no good ERP from the businesses. So that I can definitely see there is an increased activity at the time of implementation. And this is our discussion with our colleagues here is, when maybe people are just upgrading their ERPs very periodically, the S4 HANA is a big thing, and everywhere tax is a key stakeholder. And people are wiring the ERPs to accommodate the GST compliance. And that definitely dovetails with the last point which you made in terms of data analytics. Now it's no more how much of GST paid and how much is the input tax credit. They are cutting and slicing and dicing the data, even from a business perspective, in terms to see whether it's on the working capital, it's on who is buying more, which state, who is consuming, where are we purchasing from. All of this is getting addressed in terms of the technology enablement for GST.
So if I can just bring you in for a minute, if you're still there, according to you, and I'm just asking you more curiosity that's leading me to ask you this question. From a revenue authority standpoint, where do you think companies are going wrong in terms of preparing for audits? Because there's always this last minute rush. If you look at, when an audit starts, despite this level of automation, despite data being readily available on the GST and some of the processes that they've put in place, there's still a last minute struggle to provide the data to tax officials. Is there something that companies can do differently or think differently to cater to this need better?
Sangeeta, are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, see, technological interventions, once again, I'll tell you, with my experience, sheer experience, really, I'm really thanks to NIC Karnataka, with whom I'm working in the last 10 years. Once again, at adaptability by the particular institutional framework. I come across even today, we are working on a different module altogether. You won't believe, I'm not a technological expert, basically. I'm a manager. I'll try to talk to different vendors, try to understand concepts and just go through it. And even if you look at the interface of the technological by the companies, it is not a big rocket science at all. I don't know why many times they come across, they say my SAP and the DRP, they're not talking to things and all that. So it's all basically based on API and SFTP. That's all. They're two simple tools altogether. When an API integration, SFTP integration can happen, there shouldn't be any problem at all. We are not asking anybody to re-engineering their technological module. No, we are not. We are only asking them to be in line with us. That's it. Or we'll be in line with. I don't know what bottlenecks the financial people they have sitting in that particular CFO's position or whichever it is, and who technological persons will give inputs to them in that particular sense. The reason is that I've seen how actually the model works. And in fact, I am working with the GSTN and NIC, Karnataka. See, we are working through API module only. We consume through API, we put the system integration, and workflow will start. So with that, the whatever the answers they have given, like ERP automation, data management, tax count. Coming to data management, I can certainly agree because of this 2A, 2B reconciliation and all that. They're finding it really problem. I do agree. And for that, some companies they come out with their own automation tools. If I can recollect my memory, but data company, they come out with their own reconciliation. Then only they make the payment to their vendors. So, in fact, we learn from them. We are trying to put that kind of things in our place, in our analytical tool, so that refund can be automated faster, so that we can reconcile the input tax and all that. We can refund it faster. In that way, we are learning from the private experiences also. Let us see how far. However, it is okay. Even coming to data analytics, there also once again, I think there are so many tools available in the market where they can adapt and they can put into use, or else I don't think the government can give the analytical tools. I think you should have to have your own analytical tool, like the way we have our own back-end analytical tools. We are working on that. I think that can't be made public domain, so that see, it is our own. Has done with their best knowledge, they could able to give the particular inputs, and it has come out well. Yeah.
One of the other sections in our survey, we also asked our participants if they could think of measures that that the government could implement that would help their business grow. And the first thing, 71% of respondents have voted that measures to unblock working capital blockage is one of the first areas that the government could look at. So today, there are several businesses across sectors. I mean, you could look at e-commerce, you could look at telecommunication, you could look at logistics. There's a lot of credit that stays blocked, either because the business has a long gestation period, businesses that have seasonal sales. So all of these lead to the accumulation of working capital. And one of the measures that was in our survey as well is, and let me just go to that, is if the government could consider making CGST credit at least fungible. In the recent announcements, which was of course the first announcement happened during the budget announcements, and it has been vetted and implemented in the GST Council decisions, is allowing the cross utilization of CGST cash balance across states. So I think 64%, if you look at the first box here, 64% of our participants believe that cross utilization should be extended to credit as well. And why not? Because we are only talking about fungibility of central taxes. We're not really touching the state taxes. The second thing is, reverse charge liability. Globally, reverse charge liability is allowed to be paid through credit. In fact, it's not even credit, it's some sort of a set-off mechanism. It's only in India that we have this unique requirement of discharging RCM payments in cash. And of course, this puts a stress on working capital for companies. So that's another measure that respondents have recommended. And the third thing is, of course, the deeming fiction on that we have on imports. Since it's anyway revenue neutral, and where credit is fully eligible, do we really need to have this deeming fiction? Is the third suggestion on this. The fourth suggestion is, of course, is also on allowing this accumulated credit to be converted into scrips. So these are the four areas that they've, respondents have pointed out as their asks. The second bucket is on removal of restrictions on input tax credit. I think, the way the GST law is structured today, we've carried some of the vestiges from the earlier regime where, credit in respect of immovable property is restricted, employee-related expenses, personal expenses are restricted. I think one of the asks, therefore, is, if the government could consider doing away with some of these restrictions. And I think there's also been a lot of interpretational issues because of 17.5. Actually, in a welcome move, I think the GST Council has announced that they will, in the last council meeting, the press release does talk about a circular that will be issued on interpretation of some of the restrictions under 17.5. I think that's a fantastic move, and industry will wait to see what that circular reads like. It will hopefully put an end to some of the disputes, at least, that are prevailing. And like I said, again, these disputes have been carried forward from the earlier regime. So hopefully that circular addresses most of them. There are judicial precedents available. So hopefully that is addressed. The third one is rationalization of GST rates. I won't stress on this much. I think the council has been making a lot of headway in over several meetings on this. So I think this will be a work in progress for a few years to come. One other thing I do want to focus on before I hand it over to Bhaskar is the expansion of the GST net. Initially, petroleum products were, supposed to have been kept out only for the first 5 years. But I think a decision on that is still to be taken. So I think that is why you see 37% of respondents also talking about expanding GST net and bringing everything under the ambit of GST, so that seamless flow of credit and fungibility of credit is increased. Bhaskar, any quick thoughts from you on this?
Yeah, thanks, Sangeeta. A couple of points which I would like to make in terms of the reverse charge. I think one of the point is we already see that the GST legislation is mindful of this being a revenue neutral thing, meaning the valuation provision proviso to Rule 28, it says that if you can recover the input tax credit, why bother about the GST valuation? There's a concept which is already laid down in the GST law. I think why can't we just copy paste the same thing to the reverse charge? If the importer is just entitled to take the credit, two things can happen. Obviously, the valuation need not be questioned because of the proviso to Rule 28. And if the amendments can be made to say that you can use the credit to pay off, and you just use the credit, pay off, and again it gets accumulated in the credit, that is something which the taxpayer wanted to plead before the GST authorities. That is one. And in terms of the petroleum products, I think I've read in the news that even the CBIC chairman said we have to bring this petroleum products. If states are worried about their revenue, obviously you can have some other tax on top of the GST, at least to the extent of GST paid. The logistics company or the companies can recover the input tax credit. So that can avoid a little bit of a cascading kind of a thing. That is what I would like to say. So unlocking working capital blockage seems to be a big elephant in the room. As you rightly said, as the taxpayers wanted, if you can just introduce a mechanism of transferring the credit from one registration to the other, that would be helpful. Yeah, we can. I think Sangeeta, we are over to you.
Yeah, just to add on another 2 points, I think in a later vein, I think your reports have come before the 47th council meeting itself. I think you might have taken a lot of clues. So what actually going to happen in 47th that has been incorporated in the your report. It's only that cash cross credit they would like to give, whereas credit test, I don't think they would have thought about it. I think they may also look into that. Coming to RCM, I think Bhaskar has a valid point. But looking at the whole scenario of GST, the crux, the input tax rate is the one which is revolving around everywhere. And yes, the government is still looking at it in a different. I know we are still learning because it's a credit, pan-India credit. It is not. We have learned a lot of lessons giving a credit intrastate only. Now we are interstate credit. That is where the question mark lingers around any tax offices. Let us see how in the days to come, technology will handle all these issues and put a plug all to that particular loopholes and make things more easier. That's what I wanted to say.
Mahesh, if you're still there, any quick comments from your end?
Sorry?
I think that's right what Mr. Muralkrishna sir said about a lot of the points were before the council meeting and I've come through. That's why I started off on that note. It actually reflects the engagement that we've been having and continue to have. That's the only comment I wanted to make for us to know as to what is brewing, what is, been presented and also has come through. Nothing further to add.
And this is the last section, honestly, of the report. It was a little less quantitative. We asked our respondents to, let us know what, their key issues under GST were as things stand, and of course need to be addressed in the coming years. The first one was credit management. I think companies still do, like I just mentioned earlier, I think companies continue to face a lot of challenges in reconciliation of ITC, and they've been receiving notices on mismatch of ITC, which need to be addressed regularly. So I think there is some room for improvement as far as credit management goes. The second thing is also keeping track of the changing tax landscape, and on both the procedural front as well as legislative. Procedural, of course, like I said, to my mind, e-invoicing is actually resulted in a digital wave, which is positive. But as far as legislation goes, particularly for MSMEs, one of the ideas that came up in one of the other sessions was, we've had these grievance redressal committees that, even Karnataka has successfully implemented. But why not have something similar for MSMEs is an idea that came up. So perhaps that is, something that, we could look at. The third one is managing tax disputes. Again, I think Sir just said it. We are a little late as far as the survey goes. The tribunals, the announcement on formulation of the tribunals has already been, put in motion. So I think that we will see some result on that very soon. But as far as overall managing tax disputes, I think the ask of industry is in the coming years, if, disputes under GST can be kept to a minimum, that will avoid unnecessary, pile up of litigation and resources being spent on managing tax disputes. So I think these are the overarching points that emerged in our survey. Bhaskar, anything else from your end to add on these before we conclude?
No, Sangeeta, I think we are on top of the hour, and thanks, Sangeeta, and we can open up for any questions, or over to you, Badri.
I didn't realize I was on mute. Thanks, Bhaskar. Thanks, Sangeeta. That was very helpful. And yes, Dr. Murali Krishna, sir, thank you so much for your time. Those were brilliant comments. Let me just see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions. But yes, overall, yes, I think the council, the timing of the report in the council coincided. So there are a lot of things which are there in a way. And yes, I take the point which Mahesh also mentioned about the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Mahesh, the team will be in touch with you for more inputs from you as well before we kind of start interacting with the CCT on this. We'll keep you posted.
Look forward. Great.
So thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Sir,
you very much. Bye-bye.
Sir, Murali Krishna, sir, I should say this. It is always wonderful to hear you, whether it's a lighter vein or in a serious note. I think the message is very aptly conveyed always by you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Rupa, over to you.
Yes, sir. On behalf of BCIC, we express our sincere thanks, sir, for all your participation in the session. We look forward to have many more sessions, sir. Thank you very much.